today's the day. Everything seems to be back together. Did a pretty thorough walk around, looked under the hood, ran the electrics. Everything seems to be good, except for this one damn position light that won't turn on. But other than that, we're good to go. So I'm just waiting for my CFI Monos to come out. We're gonna go up in the air, spend a couple hours just doing some circuits around the airport. After 4 long months of waiting, my plane's finally ready to fly again, and Monos and I are going to be taking it up to break in the engine today. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to my channel while you're at it. There's a lot of misinformation out there about how to properly break in an engine, but there's a lot of good information too, and figuring out which is the real challenge. Well, after a lot of Googling and reading and watching videos about breaking in both aircraft and plane engines, I finally settled on an approach that I thought would work. Most manufacturers of engines and parts still rely on the traditional method of running your engine at about 65 to 75% power in order to break it in. While this recommendation made a lot of sense when it was first developed, we've got a lot more information about our engines available to us now when we fly, and that allows us to be a bit more aggressive, and that helps break in the engine both a little bit quicker and a little bit better than we used to be able to. I won't go into all the details, but I decided to run the engine at pretty close to full power for about an hour, and then pull it back and alternate between 65 and 75% for the second hour. And this approach is a bit of a hybrid between what Lycoming recommends and what I heard from some recommendations from this well-known aircraft engine guru named Mike Bush. I've read a couple of Mike's books in the past, and I've been really impressed with both his knowledge as well as his approach to aircraft maintenance. It's a bit of a long interview, but I'll put a link to a YouTube video I found from the folks over at All American Aviation, where they interviewed Mike Bush talking about his approach to engine maintenance and break-in. During the break-in flight, I had my CFI Monos fly the plane, while I spent the entire time watching the engine monitor and recording some key data points every few minutes, mostly temperatures and pressures. What I'm watching for that'll tell me the engine is breaking in nicely is to see the cylinder head temperatures start high and then slowly come down and stabilize somewhere in the mid-300s Fahrenheit. I'm also just monitoring the data points to make sure nothing changes that would tell me we need to land ASAP. Of course, even with all the prep and planning, things can still go wrong when such major work is done, so we agreed we'd stay within a few miles of the airport, so if the engine quit on us we could just glide back to the runway instead of having to put it down in a field. This made for a pretty interesting flight path. Now, I'm a bit of a data junkie, so I probably kept track of more data than most people would, and I even put it into Excel and built a chart so I could see how my temps and pressures changed over time. With my engine, I found that the temps started out high on takeoff as expected, with the CHTs hovering around 400. Although I was watching for them to come down, what I didn't know was how long that would take, and I was pretty surprised that after just about 30 minutes, the temps had dropped to between 330 and 350, which is a pretty good range for the CHT to be in at a high power setting. But our plan was to be up in the air for about 2.5 hours, so we just kept going around the control zone, and around, and around, and around. There was one moment of excitement toward the end of our flight. The student pilot announced on the radio that he'd be dropping off his instructor so he could do his first solo. And then about 15 minutes later we heard a call on the radio saying that a plane was on the grass. Somehow he lost control on landing and veered off the runway. Thankfully, neither the plane nor the runway lights were damaged, and other than a bruised ego, the student pilot was completely fine too. After 2.5 hours where we never left the Oshawa control zone even once, we landed feeling comfortable that we'd properly broken in the engine. The temperatures have been completely stable and in the right range, fuel flow was as expected, and as a nice bonus, the new engine is smoother and generates more power than the previous one. The next day, I came back to do another flight to continue the break-in and test, but I started by doing a quick inspection of the engine. No evidence of leaks, nothing loose, anything like that, but so far so good. Everything seems perfect. I mean, dare I say it. Like, not a single leak anywhere. Everything seems rock solid, secure. This is great. With everything looking good, I headed back up in the air and headed to the practice area north of Oshawa. I decided I'd do the orbits around Lindsay Airport this time, which is about a short 20-minute flight away. It's an uncontrolled airport and a pretty quiet one, so there wasn't much traffic around to worry about. The only other plane around was a Cessna 206 that showed up after about 45 minutes to do some practice RNAV approaches and holds at Lindsay, but he was easy enough to avoid. I haven't started my IFR training for real yet, but I have started the ground school portion, and it was pretty neat to watch a plane doing approaches that a few months ago would have been total gibberish to me. So I just came back from the third flight, 8.2 hours in, and it's looking really good. I think it's ready to go. I'll probably fly it 1 or 2 more times this week and then take it in and have the mineral oil changed out and get the regular oil put back in. But so far, everything's looking fantastic. Thanks very much for watching. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.